What happens when a child grows up on a street so frequently bombed by white supremacists that the neighborhood is nicknamed Dynamite Hill? What happens when that same child becomes one of the most recognized political prisoners in the world, landing on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, facing life in prison, but then walks free? What if I told you that same person spends the next 5 decades challenging capitalism, prisons, patriarchy, and empire, not from the margins, but from the lecture halls of America's top universities? Today, we're breaking down the life, trial, philosophy, and controversy surrounding Angela Yvonne Davis, one of the most influential and polarizing political thinkers of the 20th and the 21st century. If you value meaningful analysis, historical content, and conversations that go beyond the headlines, make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because this video is about understanding power, not just reacting to it. Angela Davis was born on January the 26th, 1944 in Birmingham, Alabama, at the height of Jim Crow segregation. Her childhood neighborhood was targeted so often by racist bombings that it became known as Dynamite Hill. Churches exploded, homes were destroyed, Black families lived under constant threat. This was not abstract racism. This was domestic terror. Experiencing racial violence at such a young age profoundly shaped her political worldview. For Angela Davis, racism wasn't just prejudice, it was structural, organized, and backed by institutions. That early exposure to terror planted the seed of a lifelong commitment. Liberation was not optional, it was necessary. I was approximately 8 years old when I was introduced to Miss Angela Davis. The Black Panther Party had set up an office in my hometown of Toledo, Ohio. And like many inner-city Black communities, support offered to us that had been withheld from us by local government was welcomed. Along with offering protection from the increase of police brutality, the Black Panther Party provided numerous social services and provided education that wasn't offered in mainstream society. To my knowledge, Ms. Davis was never acknowledged as a member of the Black Panther Party, although her insight was often shared with us, and it built far more self-respect as a Black American than any information offered under the umbrella of patriotism. Davis argues that capitalism and slavery were not separate phenomena. They were intertwined from the beginning. The transatlantic slave trade and plantation economy generated enormous wealth that fueled industrial development. Enslaved Africans were treated as property, commodified human beings. In her view, racism wasn't an unfortunate byproduct of capitalism. It was fundamental to it. And she believes its legacies continues in modern forms such as the racial wealth gap, housing segregation, underfunded schools, mass incarcerations. Davis contends that capitalism depends on inequality to function. It divides workers along racial lines, preventing unified resistance. And perhaps nowhere is that more visible, she argues, than what she calls the prison industrial complex. In 1970, everything changed. Angela Davis was charged with conspiracy, kidnapping, and murder in connection with the courtroom shootout in Marin County, California. The guns used were registered in her name. She was not present at the scene, but Prosecutors argued her political associations linked her to the plot. She was placed on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, arrested, held for over a year, much of it in solitary confinement, denied bail. Her affiliation with the Communist Party USA during the Cold War intensified the case. To supporters, this wasn't just prosecution, it was political repression. A global movement erupted. Free Angela. Artists, activists, intellectuals, international leaders. In 1972, after a highly publicized trial, she was acquitted of all charges by an all-white jury. The verdict was seismic. To supporters, it was proof that the state had overreached and failed. But what's often overlooked is how she handled it. Now, if you're starting to connect the dots between Angela Davis's arrest in 1970 and the subpoenas being issued and the arrest being made under today's current administration, you're starting to see the pattern. That pattern has evolved throughout American history, especially Black history. Stay with me as I share more with you about Miss Angela Davis. Angela Davis was deeply involved in her own legal strategy. Her training in logic and philosophy allowed her to dismantle the prosecution's conspiracy narrative. She emphasized the lack of direct evidence. She maintained composure. She refused to let the state define her as a caricature. Observers were struck not just by the verdict, but by her discipline. Calm, strategic, articulate. Her acquittal didn't end her activism. It just amplified it. Angela Davis became one of the leading voices in prison abolition. Not reform, abolition. She argues that prisons do not solve social problems, they warehouse them. Crime, she says, is rooted in poverty, inequality, and lack of services, conditions intensified by capitalism. She views mass incarceration as a continuation of racial control that began under slavery. Today, conversations about over-policing and prison expansion are mainstream. Decades ago, they were not. Davis was making those arguments long before they became widely accepted. She is also a foundational figure in Black feminist thought. Her work insists that race, class, and gender cannot be separated. Black women, she argues, experience racism, sexism, and economic exploitation simultaneously. Under Angela Davis's thought, liberation cannot be intersectional, or it isn't liberation at all. Now, let me ask you something. Understanding the disproportionate arrest of Blacks and people of color, should prison abolition be evaluated, or is it something totally unrealistic? Is capitalism reformable or inherently exploitive? Drop your thoughts in the comments, but keep it on the subject. This is a space for serious discussion. Unlike many activists confined to national politics, Davis frames Black liberation as part of a global struggle. She has supported anti-colonial movements in Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. She links racial justice to anti-imperialism and climate justice. In her view, exploitation is global, and resistance must be global too. That internationalism transformed her from an American activist into a global icon. It's important to understand something crucial. Black political thought is not monolithic. While Angela Davis is widely respected, she is not universally embraced. Her association with Marxism and the Communist Party made some Black Americans, mostly moderates, conservatives, veterans, and religious communities, uncomfortable. For some, communism conflicts with faith traditions and entrepreneurial values. Her prison abolition stance is another fault line. Many support reform. Fewer support eliminating prisons entirely, especially in communities affected by violent crime. These debates reflect ideological diversity, not disloyalty. To understand Angela Davis historically, we have to situate her alongside two giants, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is now a national icon, though many of his critiques of poverty and the use of the military have been softened in public memory. Malcolm X, once demonized, is now broadly respected for his emphasis on self-determination and dignity. Angela Davis occupies a different space. Like Malcolm, she offers a sharp structural critique. Like King, she connects moral philosophy to political struggle. But unlike both, her framework is explicitly Marxist and feminist and centered on prison abolition. She has not been canonized in the same way as Dr. Martin Luther King has, and that may be precisely because her critique targets the economic foundation of American society itself. Angela Davis stands as one of the most significant radical thinkers of her era. She argues that capitalism is inseparable from slavery's legacy, that racism is structural, not accidental, that prisons function as racial control, that individualism undermines solidarity, that global inequality and environmental destruction are tied to profit. Her arrest and acquittal made her a symbol. Her scholarship made her enduring. Her ideas continue to shape movements today, from racial justice to feminist theory to abolitionist politics. She is definitely admired, debated, critiqued, celebrated. But one thing is for sure, she is virtually impossible to ignore. As I have said many times before, history has a pattern. First, it demonizes radical critics. Then, it sanitizes them. Then, it quotes them selectively. The real question is not whether Angela Davis was controversial. The question is whether her analysis of power, capitalism, prisons, racial hierarchy will prove prophetic. Because if she's right, reform is not enough. Transformation is required. And judging from today's political climate, it is possible to conclude that she may have been onto something. If this video showed you how Angela Davis's worldview should have us relooking at American society today, I need you to do 4 things for me right now. First, subscribe and hit the notification bell. This is the kind of information that gets ignored or dismissed, and you need to see every video we release. Second, like this video and share it with your family, your church, and your community. People need to understand how America has always responded to powerful Black voices. Third, leave a comment and answer these questions so that others could learn. 1. How does understanding Angela Davis's story help how you perceive her today? 2. Was Angela Davis ahead of her time? And 3. How do we teach the next generation to recognize the patterns that Angela Davis showed us in American society. Fourth, explore the sources and books on this topic in our complete Black History Library at the link in the description and in the pinned comments below. We are not going to let them paint Angela Davis in a negative light. We're not going to let them try to minimize her impact. Subscribe, share, and speak the truth. I'll see you at the next video.